Hello, everyone. Welcome to Random Encounter 297 or 297. My name is John O'Logan, and I can't believe it. We're only 3 episodes away from episode 300 of Random Encounter. It seems like just yesterday that we recorded episode 200. So we're gonna have to come up with something kind of cool for that one. Not only is episode 300 almost upon us, but also not E3 2024 is almost upon us. Yes, that is right. It is almost the end of May, getting very close to the beginning of June, and this is kind of an interesting year for video game fans because around this time of year, at least I look at like the schedule of games that are coming out, and I think, that looks a little sparse. Not too much is coming out in later in the year, but that's where not E3 comes into play. Summer Game Fest. So there are going to be so many game announcements in the next 2 weeks. It's going to be mind blowing. So 2 weeks from now, RPG fan and presumably the rest of the internet, all of the gaming press, if there is another video game site aside from us, they're going to be launched into overdrive, covering more game news than any one person can absorb. And thankfully, not one person has to absorb it because we have a whole team here. So 2 people are going to be joining us today. First up is Jerry.
Howdy.
And also from our news team is Tin.
Hi.
Tin, I assume you are ready for the avalanche of news that is going to be coming in about 2 weeks with not E3.
Brace yourself.
Oh, God.
That's pretty much how I feel, too. It's a crazy, crazy time. But you know what? Well, a lot of people are going to be pretty excited about what's coming out in the next couple of weeks. Something came out a few weeks ago that has a lot of people very excited, really bringing some of that not E3 energy, and that is Hades 2. So Hades 2 is obviously the sequel to Hades, which was Supergiant Games' probably their biggest hit. Supergiant Games just delivers hit after hit after hit of incredibly original, interesting games. But Hades was special. Hades came out around the end of 2022, and it was a ray of sunshine through the clouds of 2022. It was just wonderful. And Jerry, you reviewed Hades back in October of 2020. Now, I know personally there are some games in my past that I wish I could go back and re-review, that I wish I could go back and alter the score. I'm curious, how do you feel about your original review? Because you gave it a rave, you gave it a 90, you gave it an editor's choice. But is there anything in that you might tweak a little bit?
Well, yeah, I remember expressing this when I 100% of the game or near 100% of the game. It's like, man, I wish I would have scored this even higher. Not that 90 is anything to balk at, but
no, certainly not.
Supergiant Games titles are especially wonderful because a lot of times developers will put the good stuff up front, and then you could see as time goes on, they've lost resources or they were in crunch or they need to meet a deadline, and then the game kind of falls off. But Supergiant Games is almost the opposite, where like the beginning's great, it's good, but it gets even better as you go because of the customization, the difficulty management, all the different story stuff that pops up. There's constant goodies and surprises showing up throughout the game, and Hades is just like that. So when I reviewed it after beating the game once, and while that was 20 hours of gameplay, and I got a pretty good idea of the core of the game, and it warranted an editor's choice and all that, I probably would have scored it even higher after 100% of the game because there's just so much richness there and depth of design. And the idea here is a lot of developers will say, why are we putting so much effort in the things fewer players are going to see? The end game, the extra stuff. The Supergiant Games doesn't care about that because they know a lot of the players are going to reach that end game and find those goodies because their games are just so well designed.
Yep, exactly. Tin, what's your background with Hades, the original?
I also played the first game actually during early access, and I used to watch friends play it first, and I was like, this seems hard. But then, like, since I do like the lore of the game, I was like, it was also like out of my league. I haven't been playing that much roguelike games, so and compared to their past games, I think that Hades was a lot more challenging, I'd say. Like at first I struggled a bit, but then I realized that's exactly how they designed the game to make it more interesting and a lot better as it goes on. So yeah.
My background with Hades is I did not play it in 2020. I think I played it in 2022. I checked my records here. According to this, I played it for 83 hours, so I enjoyed it a little bit. I got the first ending and beat Hades. I was like, yay! I beat Hades. I was like, oh, there's a lot more here because there is. When beating Hades is just the beginning. And it's just, in my opinion, Hades is one of the most exceptional games of the last ever. It is challenging and interesting and beautiful and really sexy and just engaging, fun characters, some brilliant voice acting, some remarkable music. And then Supergiant Games, instead of announcing their next game, which they've never done a sequel before, they announced Hades 2, which really took a lot of people off guard, not in a bad way. We were like, you're doing more with it? Okay, give us more Zagreus, give us more. And they didn't. They instead decided to pivot and give us a brand new main character with completely new mechanics. They are revisiting the world of the game, but they're not remaking Hades exactly. It's not a one-to-one. So let's talk a little bit about Hades 2 early access. So famously, Hades 1 was in early access. It had a rather lengthy early access period where Supergiant refined the game. They introduced new content. And they are going a similar route with Hades 2. This is not the full game that we're getting right now. It's early access, which means that we're getting much more than a demo, but not the full game. But we're going to talk about it anyway because this is a special, special game and a special series. So let's talk about your impressions of the new protagonist, Melinoe. She is the daughter of Persephone and Hades, so she is Zagreus' sister. But her background, what happens, is a little bit different than what happened with Zagreus' upbringing. So, Bob, why don't you tell us a little bit about the setup for the plot?
So you kind of just show up in the woods playing as Melinoe, and you realize that she's spent basically her whole life here. And eventually you learn that she was saved by a witch that Hades entrusted to, keep her safe. And so she's basically raised with the sole purpose of saving her family from Kronos, who captured mother, father, and brother, and basically stole their home in the Underworld. So that's Melinoe's sole purpose. So it's basically a revenge story. And the story, while the premise is good and interesting because she's the voice acting is fantastic, she's a likable character, and the way the other characters interact with her is engaging. I mean, this is a gameplay first sort of game, and it's charming in the way it's presented. But really, I think, which is consistent with Hades 1, the more you learn, the more into it you're going to be. Like I said before, the premise in the beginning is good. It's great. It gets you in the door. But then things just get better and better and better the more you play.
Tin, how would you say that she differs from Zagreus, not just in terms of gameplay, which we'll be getting into, but in terms of her characterization, who she is?
I'd add something to the plot, or probably just give a silly summary. Like in Hades,
there's going to be spoilers here for anyone listening, by the way. But the game doesn't have an ending yet, so relax. Yeah. It's fine. We're not going to spoil that.
Yeah. So in Hades, like Zagreus is like the child who wants to run away from home. In Hades 2, Melinoe is a child who wants her home back. So
nice.
That's pretty much how I'm like seeing the entire plot of the game right now. But in terms of characteristic, I'd say Melinoe is more obedient and kind compared to Zagreus being rebellious and all that. But it was understandable why Zagreus was like that. So,
Zagreus is I mean, my interpretation of Zagreus, I suspect everyone has their own interpretation and how they take the character. Mm-hmm. Mine is as a kind of a spoiled bitch, really. Not in a bad way. I don't mean spoiled bitch in a bad way at all. But she seems a little bit more, I guess, based on what I've seen. I haven't played the early access, but I've certainly seen like trailers and stuff like that, she seems a little bit more serious, a little bit less lighthearted than Zagreus, presumably because of her situation.
Yeah, I mean, when she's raised in adversity, Zagreus was raised in comfort, and I think that explains a lot of the difference between the two.
Yes. Well, because obviously there are a lot of differences between the two, but one of the differences between the two is in the gameplay. So let's talk a little bit about that. It's still a roguelike, obviously, and that mechanic is play, die, try again. Everything's reset. But there are some persistent elements, certain upgrades, not all upgrades, but certain upgrades that you find can be carried over, such as weapons, and you can upgrade your skills at your home base. That's kind of the soul of a roguelike. How does she play as compared to Zagreus?
Well, you don't have multiple dashes. It's kind of just...
That is a game breaker right there.
Yeah. So it can feel more difficult, especially if you're accustomed to the fluidity of Zagreus. And I think in the most recent patch they put out for the early access, they actually addressed wanting her to feel a little more fluid, but they seem committed to giving her the single dash. And Hermes shows up again, and one of Hermes' nice perks in the first Hades was even more dashes. So
I love seeing Hermes in the original.
Yeah, Hermes is he's still one of my favorite gods in the game, but he doesn't have that power here. A lot of the gods give different powers that are more geared towards what Supergiant Games trying to do with Milanoe. And so there's that big difference. But the weapons are the big thing here. And you're not going to have, the repeater or the gauntlets or the sword. You're going to have other great weapons that are actually quite different. And they come with different skills besides just casting and hitting. And having a special, like you can do these special magic attacks that each weapon has that depletes your energy bar that refills after you go to a new room. So they've souped up the gameplay in some ways while also taking away some toys that you might be used to in the first 80s.
Tin, so far, are you enjoying how she plays?
At first, I also struggled a bit because of that. Yeah, because of the missing double dash thing. But I think Supergiant is trying to even though I'm pretty sure they were expecting that Hades players back then would be used to the gameplay already, that they might find Hades 2 already easy, probably, like they won't struggle like they did during the first game. So I guess that's the reason why they approached it different this time. And I'd also say that Hades 2 feels a lot more difficult. But this is just me personally, but it's probably because I got so used to the fluidity of Zagreus. But yeah, in terms of that, I think they're like forcing you also to explore the things that Melinoe can do, especially with her weapons, just like what Bob said, and their introduction to, apart from the boons, they've also added in elements. So yeah, I honestly, even though I'm struggling playing Hades 2 compared to Hades 1, I love it even more. Like the combat is just really good for me.
100% agree with everything she said.
This might fall into spoiler territory, so if anyone is looking to avoid, maybe skip ahead about, a minute or two. But like I said, this is still a roguelike. And in the original game, Zagreus was the god of rebirth, which was an excellent in-story conceit as to why he was resurrected every single time that he died. Every time he died, he would rise out of the blood. What is the central conceit here for... Okay, before we do anything, let's... How the hell do you pronounce her name? I thought it was Melanoe. I think we're all saying it differently. How?
This is something I struggle with because it does not roll off my tongue, and I feel like I say it different every time. It is not clear to me. I say Melanoe. That could be wrong.
I think it's Melanoe because that's how Hecate calls her.
Melanoe?
Yeah.
What is the central conceit for Mel's presumably coming back from the dead with every death? Does it run in the family, or?
I don't think it's fully explained here yet. It has to do with Chronos, though, I think. Okay. The manipulation of time. Tim, did I miss something? Is it clearly explained?
Actually, I thought it's also because of the witchcraft thing that
Hmm.
Hecate taught her. I think. I'm not sure as well. But now that you mention it, it also has something to do with Kronos. So I'm not sure yet. So I also can't tell.
I mean, it probably is the witch though, because I know a lot of what she's able to do that like frustrates Kronos has to do with the spells that she's crafting, and the spells that she crafts not only makes her stronger and adds more things to their home in the Crossroads, but also gives her access to other things that were sealed previously. So I do think that is core to the game is the spellcraft.
Yeah. Now that I recall, like after you beat the first boss, she also says a certain. She also says the same spell cast returning back. So maybe it is a witchcraft thing.
Hmm.
The time travel mechanic would make sense because in the original game, it wasn't just Zagreus that would die. Every single run, you would kill the various bosses of the Underworld, and whenever you would return, they would be alive again. Uh, Presumably because everyone was a demon and or already dead. So they do need to come up with some kind of central conceit to explain why enemies, uh, bosses specifically, that you beat are able to come back in the next run. And time manipulation would do that, but I guess that's just a part of the plot that isn't quite developed yet.
Well, I
Um,
mean, it's not a focus. They might
hmm,
have like said something in a one liner or whatever, and then waved their
okay,
hand, so it doesn't really stick. That could be it.
Mhm.
okay. Well, in the original game, Zagreus was. I mean, Zagreus was not a magician. It was very melee based, give or take one laser weapon. You had the infernal arms, so you had several different weapons that included a sword, a spear, a bow and arrow. There was a shield if you wanted to get your Steve Rogers on and throw your mighty shield. What are some of the weapons here, and how do they differ from the original?
So, I mean, it's got a variety of weapons in that they're not just good melees. Like you got this giant axe that just, as you can imagine, just the slow cleaves, which is my personal favorite. Um, and the combo is what makes it interesting because it's not just butt mashing. It's like if you're doing the third swing in that combo, you better make sure you're not going to get hit because you're leaving yourself wide open. So the timing on it is very interesting. It's not just like big axe hits hard. You got to be skillful with it, but it's also the special attacks with it are also quite different, which tend to be ranged or counter driven. So some of the weapons are very unique. Like you've got a skull you can throw, and then once you're out of skulls, like your ammo's depleted, you got to like go into the skulls. Like so, your special is a right click that lets you just zoom into the skulls to get all your ammo back. So you can't just reload it like you would with the repeater in the first game. You gotta go fetch skulls again. And the real interesting thing about that, of course, is the hammer. The hammer can change the weapons dramatically, just like it could in the first game. You've got a spear that can also throw homing darts out. You've got wands that kind of throw these slow moving projectiles that like are fast at first and then peter out and then just kind of explode. So they do definitely feel a lot different from the weapons in the first game, and that's a credit to Supergiant Games because they show 5 of the weapons already, and they're already quite different.
Mm.
Yeah. To add to that, Melanoia also has like charged attacks, which are called like Omega attacks, which can also be improved in the game, and they also kind of change things up, like compared to Zagreus, where you you constantly always have to move and you can like spam a lot of combos altogether. Um, the difference with Melanoi's play style is that Supergiant seems to want to approach this in a way that players have to be a lot more smart when it comes to um, doing their combos, because they highly focused on doing the perfect timing when it comes
Mm.
to dealing with the enemies and bosses, because you can't just hit this button and expect that things will go smoothly, because this time it's you really have to study the patterns and even the movements of not just Melanoid, but almost everything around you, and not even just the bosses, because there's they're really focusing more on being smart this time, I think. So
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people ask the question, do I have to play the first game in order to play the sequel? And they're completely referring to story. But I would say, like, in this game, it's a gameplay thing. Like, if you never played the first Hades, you jump right into Hades 2, you're like, holy crap, this game is hard. And like, I would consider myself a pretty good Hades player. Like, I was able to get lots of consistent wins in that game. But in Hades 2, my experience is very similar to 10, where it's like, this game is hard. This is not a joke. It's taken me much longer just to get one win under my belt.
So we're looking at a Super Mario Brothers The Lost Level sort of situation here.
Hey, we like this game.
I would say that it could go either way. It could very much be that the game is harder. It also could be that Supergiant ratcheted up the difficulty for the early access so they could figure out the perfect baseline for the players and for everything. Whereas the balance, though it does sound like the balance is pretty damn good already, they might be looking to alter it over time and see how that works. One of my favorite things about the original Hades was, I think I mentioned earlier, the game was just sexy. It was so sexy. Character portraits, gods, characters. There was quite a lot of sex in here. And, the Greek gods were a significant part of that. And a lot of the Greek gods are actually back. And just like before, they share their boons with Mel. And can you tell me a little bit about some of some of your returning favorites? And are there any new gods that we meet?
So there are some new ones, and there are a lot of returning faces, and there are some gods that I have not seen return. I haven't seen Ares. I haven't seen Dionysus, and I really like Dionysus in particular. I liked a lot of his abilities, which was like damage over time stuff and messing with enemy movement. But you're going to see Zeus, of course. You're going to see Poseidon, Hermes, referenced earlier. Those are fan favorites. Aphrodite shows up. Interestingly enough, they're not done with the game, which I have to keep in mind because it feels like a finished game because it's so good, but they still got to work on it. The artwork change has like messed with me a bit just because I've spent 100 hours playing the first Hades. I'm used to the gods looking a certain way. I think it's good that they changed up the artwork, but it's just like, man, Zeus isn't supposed to look like that. It's like Zeus isn't even a real person. He can look like whatever artists want him to look like. So
they should have just made him a swan, really.
I mean, why not though? He's a god. He can do what he wants.
And did as a swan.
A lot of the abilities, and this is one way I hope they kind of like fine tune the game. A lot of the abilities are very different from the first Hades. Like every god doesn't have their own super move. Instead, you have a moon god that has a super move, which is a fantastic mechanic that I love. But the other thing is, I feel like a lot of the abilities aren't as interesting as they were in the first game. Which there's still time for it to work and be improved upon, but that doesn't mean it makes it not fun. It's just like it's a criticism of a 90, right? So I think Supergiant Games will get there. It just feels very vanilla across gods. The voice acting though is the same. You're going to hear a lot of the same voices. Poseidon is one of my personal favorites. I love his voice acting. Hermes is great because he's just ba 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 ba. And like I said, Selene, the moon god, she's a fantastic new addition who I absolutely love.
A lot of the new gods, I'd say also, like, I noticed that during my runs, like, some of the gods also have, like, they offer the same benefits. I'm not sure if you've noticed it, Jerry. Like, it's kind of the same benefit, but they just tweaked it a bit compared to the... Yeah, so I guess that's also my criticism as well. Like, sometimes it's okay to miss out on this god because maybe you get this from another god and it'll be fine. Like, yeah.
So your cast, like the circle you put down, which is like supposed to like stop enemy movement. There's like a fire version and there's an ice version, and they are very samey. Like the ice obviously like freezes and slows the enemies. But the fire is just damage over time. It doesn't really change the cast in an interesting way, the way they changed the cast in the first game.
Yeah. Those are also my criticisms when it comes to the boons that are being offered. But I do
Mhm.
like the fact that they added the elements in when it comes to boons. So it's like partnering. You have to think more in regards to which boon you would pick to partner with. So
It's an interesting decision you got to make because duos are still there. Like if you get
yeah,
two guys,
yeah,
it's a chance
exactly.
you can get a duo thing. But there's also an infusion where if you've got 4 water, then you can get some huge health increases. So
Mm-hmm.
you got to decide: do you want to commit to just Poseidon, or do you want to diversify to hope for a really strong duo?
Mm-hmm.
With the, I mean, obviously the boons play a significant role here, but I guess one of the dangers of any kind of roguelike, even ones made by Supergiant, is that it can eventually feel like a grind, especially with the repetitive nature of it. Uh, it seems like Hades 2, much like the original, manages to avoid this. How does it avoid feeling like a grind, especially since they're in early access and the combat is not yet refined to what it will be, presumably in about a year and a half?
So I think Supergiant Games has perfected the art of just giving you a secret or a new mechanic or a new significant story thing like every other run. So you're not going to go 5 runs beating your head up against the wall until you can get some like resource to help you craft a thing, and then now you can progress. They constantly throw surprises at you, which keeps the game fresh. So they don't give you everything right away. That would overwhelm a player, and then they have no more tricks to give you later on. But they don't like withhold secrets from you where you're playing 5 hours of like the same game over and over and over again. No matter how good the game is, if you're just fighting the same bosses over and over again, it's not gonna be fun. The lines change, there's new secrets, there's new spells to learn. So that keeps it fresh.
Mhm.
Yeah. Are we allowed to talk about? Sorry, this might be also a bit spoilery, but are we allowed to talk about the other place you go to?
Oh yeah.
I think that I know what you're talking about. Jer, I believe you do allude to it in your
I do.
preview. So yeah, we can mention it, but don't get into too
Yeah,
spoilery. So it does start out
yeah,
in the underworld, right?
yeah. That's the thing. I do like that. They're offering you 2 options this time.
Mm.
Well, it doesn't really start that way, but as time passes, like I guess when you're like stuck going to the underworld and you're kind of getting pissed or something, and you'd be surprised that they're offering a different um path where you would go to, and going to this area also like would highly improve, well, like the items you get there are also like would help you in battling in the underworld. So
Mm.
it's like you have 2 things to choose from, and whether you go here or whether you go there, um things would improve every after run. So yeah.
I don't know if you had this experience, Tim, but like I was actually getting to the point where I was like, man, the other world's too hard. I'm getting a little bit frustrated. And as soon as I had that feeling, it's like the game read my mind is when I was able to go to the surface. So like I was like,
Mhm.
holy cow, okay, this is fantastic. I could do something else now.
Oh yeah, it surely did, and I was so surprised, and I I immediately like I was like it made me want to play more. So
Mhm.
this spark went back again. Like after I played a bit in the surface, and I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I can go back in the underworld this time and be a lot better this time. So
You got a new bag of tricks.
uh-huh. I
Yeah.
do like the options that we can do that every now and then, and it just doesn't get boring at all, or it doesn't feel grindy at all.
Hmm. And they
Um,
actually end up showing like a third and a fourth way to play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
wow. Okay. So there are a lot of levels here that, I mean, obviously, again, early access. If you think these are all of the secrets that they're offering, then you're not paying attention. So, it certainly sounds like they've packed, I would argue, any other game, any other studio, this would be more than enough. This would
Hmm.
be a big statement. But Supergiant seems to be wanting to go the extra mile, and they've packed in an awful lot of secrets, changes of types of modes, things like that. It's super exciting to hear that they've already gone this far with the early access, because it makes you wonder how much further there is to go.
Yeah, I think Supergiant has a different definition when it comes to the saying or labeling a game called early access because
Yeah.
this game is big right now. Like I when I played Hades early access compared to Hades 2 early accesses, I'd say it's times two. I can't wait. Like, what
Yeah.
else are they gonna add more?
Well, that's their pedigree. I mean, they've kind of just proven themselves over more than 10 years. Like, this is the caliber of games we can put out, and they don't want to lose that reputation. So you know they're going to make this game even better than the first game. I have no doubt about it. It's not there yet, but it's early access. So like, is that probably not even going to be released until next year. So
Yeah.
I have full faith, knowing Supergiant Games and their developers, that they are going to kill it once this game hits 1.0.
We're talking about the settings of the game and the various locations you can go to. I kind of want to go to the home base. So in the original game in Hades, it was House of Hades that you go to after every death. And this is primarily where you be developing your relationships with the various other characters. Here it's called the Crossroads. It's not the House of Hades, still in the Underworld. It seems like an intriguing twist on that setting. What kind of characters will we be able to find in the Crossroads?
So, I mean, this is all based on Greek mythology. So you're going to
Yes.
run into some known figures like Odysseus, and of course the gods that you're accustomed to seeing. There's also someone named Nemesis, who's retribution incarnate. I'm not familiar with the Nemesis in Greek lore, but she's a pretty interesting character, and she kind of fits the mold of the kinds of people you're going to run into in this sort of world. And that's the other great thing about these.
I believe she was the goddess of vengeance.
Yeah, and that's kind of the role she plays in this game as well. So whether or not there's going to be new faces or old faces, not that all the characters are the same, but they conduct themselves in a way and interact with the main character in a way that feels stylistically similar to the first game, which is a good thing because you kind of know what you're getting, and all the characters are different, but the interactions are similar.
Okay. One thing I do want to ask is, I suspect I know the answer to this. I have not looked at any spoilers, but I suspect it's the same case. Hades is unapologetically queer in terms of its relationships. There are two romantic interests, Meg and Thanatos, and both can be romanced. And you can even end up in a polyamorous relationship with both of them because, as they say, they're gods. And that was something that gods did. I would be very surprised if Hades 2 didn't already delve into queer relationships and that kind of representation. Does it, I guess?
So there's a bath, and I don't tend...
So, you know what, Bob? You can just leave it at that, really. There's a bath. Okay, there's our answer. Okay, so, good.
Tin, have you gotten anyone to take a bath with you? I can't get anyone to take a bath with me.
Oh, yeah. I bathe with Nemesis and even Hecate.
How did you do it? I've tried, and they just give it back to me. They're like, take your bath salts. I don't want any part of this. I like this discussion too because it's like those old schoolyard sort of discussions. Like, hey, did you know you could do this with this character? And then the other character's like, no way, you can't do that. So like, I like this because it's early access, like the Wild West. There's no guides or anything. I'm sure there are, but it's things are still coming out. So I'm excited to hear what Tin has to say.
Also, I just got to be honest. There's a bath. Might go down as my favorite answer I've ever gotten on Random Encounter.
Fantastic.
That is just pure magic right there. That's pure radio magic. If this was on the radio. So
I mean, there's clearly the option, and Tin's explored it.
My first attempt as well with Nemesis, she rejected me. I think you have to give them enough nectar at some point, and they would be fine by the time you give them bath salts. So yeah.
Okay, that's a good tip. Mm-hmm. That makes sense too.
Yeah. That's pretty good, and it kind of answers my question about the game. I would have been very surprised if there wasn't that relationship component.
Yeah, but actually, I'm not yet sure when it comes to romantic relationships yet. When it comes to Melanoy, I feel like they haven't. I'm not sure if you noticed something, Bob, but I'm not sure if they've really explored that much yet.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where they don't want to reveal too much. Mm-hmm. also in terms of the character differences, like Zagreus was more like you said, kind of a spoiled kid, kind of like used to comforts and all that. So he was fine exploring that stuff. Melanoi is clearly driven by saving her family. So her
Yeah.
priorities are not romance.
Yeah. Although I got to be honest, I am getting Big Meg energy from Nemesis. Looking at this character portrait, I don't know if the characters are similar, but yeah, Big Meg energy.
Actually, in Hades too, Nemesis kind of like her role when it comes to the gameplay. She kind of plays like Thanatos.
Uh-huh.
I think you'd agree
Yes.
with me, Jerry.
A harder
So-
Thanatos. I've yet to beat her in competition.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Geez, these character portraits. I'm just on the wiki right now looking at some of the character portraits. Real pretty art in this game. Similarly, I might as well transition that into the look. So obviously, this is Supergiant Games are not known for what you would call groundbreaking in terms of polygon count graphical intensity, but their art style is so unique and their own, and it is iconic and, frankly speaking, absolutely gorgeous. It really seems like Hades 2 has been capitalizing on that and is expanding it from the. How does the game look?
I mean, aside from my grievances with the gods looking a little bit different, clearly there are talented artists behind this game. All the effects pop. It's well animated. It's smooth. It's clean. There's decorations and details everywhere. I mean, it's kind of what you would hope to see from a Hades sequel.
It's actually both like a pro and con for me. Like, I love how visually it looks, but at times there's also way too many effects when you're like playing the game. So sometimes I can't see some things, like when
Too many particle effects.
Yeah. So it's also a problem for me, but at the same time, the game is gorgeous.
I actually agree with that. I've lost my cursor before, which has made me inaccurate with some of my abilities because I'm like, wait, where's even my cursor? My aim is off.
You know, given that it's Supergiant, I would not be surprised if you dug into some of the options and settings that there might be an option to reduce particle effects.
Oh, probably.
No doubt.
I just never touched the settings, so.
I suspect that's something, again, it's early access. That's something that they are probably going to address. And as it's in early access, I wanted to ask you both, no judgments, again, it's early access. We know, we're not judging. That being said, is there anything currently missing from the game that is like jarring or makes you go, oh yeah, this isn't finished yet?
I felt like the beginning was the enemies were all bullet sponges. Like, I felt like I was just hitting the same enemies over and over and over again. And my damage just wasn't there yet. So I needed to unlock some Arcana cards to get my damage up so that the game felt normal. I feel like in the beginning, it's just like you're just punching a wall. And it's a little dull and frustrating. It's like, why am I so weak? But eventually, after a few hours of upgrades, you'll get there.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I do agree with that as well. I also did notice that I'm not sure if it's just because it's early access. Before I even got my first clear, like in Hades 1, you can see your stats per run, like a rundown thing, like just a summary or whatever. But in Hades 2, you can only have access to that after your first clear. So I'm not sure why they approached it that way. Like, I think since they upped the notch of the difficulty this time, they're really expecting that the players have to constantly die, and just before they can get their first clear. I'd be super surprised if someone out there or cleared the game in just first few runs.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think also they withhold access to information from you like they did in the first game with the records room. But there's certain details you can't learn about your stats and all that stuff unless you've done certain spells to unlock them in the Crossroads.
Okay. Well, I mean, like I said, Hades, the original Hades, was in early access from December of 2018 to September of 2020. That, of course, what the timeline was extended because of the pandemic, and probably it would have been released a few months earlier. But realistically speaking, it was in terms of development, it was probably in the equivalent of about a year and a half. With that in mind, version 1.0 of Hades 2 would probably be out in the fourth quarter of 2025. Now, here's the big question. I played the original. I loved the original. I have not played early access. Do you think that folks like me should wait to play this game? Or do you think that there is already so much here to do that fans of the original should just dive in and enjoy the early access period?
So I think it's personal taste, really. If you want to have fun with a good game, like play it now. But they're clearly patching it. They're clearly working on it. Normally, if I wasn't like writing for the site, I would not have played the early access just because I want to feel the finished product. I don't even know if my save is going to carry over when it fully releases. So like I'm investing all this time in upgrading my character and all that. I might have to start over. I don't know what's going to happen there. So if you just want to play a fun game, you don't care about any of that stuff, and you need Hades, play it. But if you're like me, you kind of stay away from early access games. You just be patient, I guess.
See, I guess I'd agree with Jerry as well. I don't usually.
I believe it's pronounced Jeranoe.
Jeranoe.
J-Dog.
I also try to stay away most of the time with early access games, but this is Hades, so it's an exception for me. And since I also played the early access of the first game, I was just really looking forward to this, and it's also one of my most anticipated game of the year. And apart from that, I think if you're like me, who's also just really anticipating this, I would highly suggest to just go at it and see what are they offering this time. Because I believe they're adding really a lot more when it comes to the full release. So if you want to be like, if you want a head start, then go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna wait, but also I understand the urge to play very, very well because curiosity is it's overwhelming, and it looks so good. It looks like Hades, and it looks but like a new take on it. And but on the other hand, I have not played Transistor. So, if I get that hankering, I can go back and play some of Supergiant's older games, and they are very, very good.
They're all good.
Yeah.
It's Supergiant Games. They are leaders in the industry for a reason. Well, let's move on from Hades 2 now and move on to our discussion question for today. As I said at the beginning of the episode, Not E3 is coming up in just a few weeks. In fact, we will hopefully have a full breakdown of everything, or at least mostly everything, that happened in our next episode of Random Encounter in 2 weeks. So, since it's the episode just before it, I wanted to chat about some of what we might be able to expect in the next 2 weeks. Now, this is not going to be a comprehensive preview or anything like that. This is just a few things that we'd like to see, that we think we might see, or in a crazy world that maybe the impossible will happen. Maybe Silk Song will get released. We don't know. So first off, let me bring up Nintendo. I think for everyone, Nintendo Directs usually, I know they're not. There is no such event as Not E3. It's Summer Game Fest, but people call it Not E3 because it's a collection of various game announcements and festivals and things like that. And Nintendo Directs usually happen during it. It's usually one of the biggest ones of the year because Nintendo, though they like to stand out from a crowd, they're also not stupid. They know everyone's paying attention. This is presumably going to be the last Not E3 for the Nintendo Switch because maybe this time next year we might have at least the announcement of a new system. If either of you could make any predictions, what do you think that we could expect from this year's Not E3?
I'm not the biggest. I do love Nintendo, but I'm not up to date on a lot of the goings-ons of Nintendo. But from my perspective, as far as hardware release and all that are concerned, if the Switch 2 or whatever it is on its way, even if it's not announced, I would expect quite a few titles to be announced for release next year.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to cannibalize their sales of a new hardware system by releasing Switch exclusive titles. So if there's something in the works, get it out the door now before the next console comes out.
Oh, Jer, it's Nintendo. everything is going to be re-released on whatever the next console is.
Fair.
Everything will be re-released on the next console for full price.
Yeah, I heard they're actually re-releasing Breath of the Wild in the new Switch as well. So. And
basically, Mario Kart 8 Super Deluxe we can expect on the Super Switch.
Yeah. Actually, this upcoming Nintendo Direct, I'm not sure, but based on the things that I've read, I don't think they're announcing anything yet when it comes to the new hardware. But
I don't think so.
yeah, but I think they're mostly going to show off some just last few releases for the Switch. Which honestly, I don't know what else are they're gonna show for this year.
Yeah,
Like
I have a feeling if I had to put money on the table, I would say that there's not going to be a new 3D Mario that's going to be reserved for the next system. They're not going to announce a sequel to the next Zelda game, the next 3D Zelda game. That will be presumably that'll be a released on the next system. Maybe it'll be a cross console. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a new 2D Zelda. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the engine already exists. Seasons and the two Game Boy Color Zelda games are sitting right there, ready for remakes. Oracle of Seasons, those would be low-hanging fruit that they could release. That would be pretty big releases. I would not be surprised if we got an Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Time remakes.
That's a really good prediction.
Yeah.
Especially with Link's Awakening being so successful.
Exactly. I mean, I might be wrong. Who knows? Maybe they'll release a brand new 2D Zelda, because it's been a few years since we had one, and they are pretty successful for them. I don't think it'll be a shadow drop. I think it'll be if this is coming out later in the year. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be the most exciting Nintendo Direct in the world, but I think that Nintendo is probably going to try to make a few last hurrahs for the system. But we'll see. There are still games coming out in 2024, of course, for a variety of systems and platforms. Out of curiosity, are there any in there that you are specifically excited to see more of? Because usually there are like final game trailers and things like that. Is there anything that you are excited to see more of that we already know about?
I'm a huge Obsidian fan, so I want to see more.
Mine.
Avowed. Like,
You're taking mine.
Okay. Because it looks like a good Skyrim, and I really want a good Skyrim.
Everyone wants a good Skyrim, especially Bethesda.
I take every opportunity I can to just kick Skyrim, because I hate how popular it is. But yeah, Avowed looks fantastic, and it's Obsidian, so you know it's going to be good. And then Professor Layton and the New World of Steam. I'm a huge Professor Layton fan, and I am so glad to have the Professor back. And I might buy a Switch if we actually get Professor Layton and the New World of Steam soon.
Are we just talking about like something that Nintendo would release?
Oh, anybody
for this time, or the E3, not so E3 as a whole.
Yeah, not E3 as a whole. Any game that we already know about. Is there anything you're excited to see more of?
Oh, probably Monster Hunter Wilds. I actually want to see more gameplay of it, or more lore regarding it, because the last trailer they've shown is just mostly the setting, and it's still kind of we only know so little, so I want to see more of that, since I think Capcom is also part of the list of the developers attending or presenting in the event. So,
we'll definitely see Capcom in there. Next question. Are there any predictions for a game that you bet will be released? So something that is not like a long shot or anything, something that you think might be announced.
So I'm a big indie guy. I love my indies. And it's been 3 years since we had The Life and Suffering of Sir Brant. If anyone's not aware of that game, I wrote a review for that game. It is a picture book driven, like choose your own adventure in a gritty, terrible world where your path really does change depending on your decisions. And a lot of games claim that this game delivers on it. I would love another game from that universe, or at least from those developers, because no game really does choices matter like Seaver does. or several, however it's pronounced.
Yeah.
For me, I'm still hoping for that Final Fantasy IX remake. I don't know where the hell it is, but there are still rumors resurfacing again. But every single time I'd see a rumor about it, I just don't feel anything anymore. I'll just see it.
But
I'll
That's
just
called
believe
Silk Song
it.
Fever, Tin.
So yeah, that's what I'm hoping to hear soon, I guess. But from what I've heard as well, since lately I've been digging a lot more for news, and I heard that since Xbox will be also showcasing that old Xbox 360 JRPG fans would probably enjoy this upcoming showcase. I don't know what it is, but fingers crossed. Hopefully it could be like a port or a remastered version of Lost Odyssey or Blue
cool.
Dragon and all of that. So yeah.
My prediction, and I think I've said it on this podcast before, but I'm going to say it again because Naughty 3 is coming up. My prediction is that we're going to get a 2D HD remake of either Bahamut's Lagoon or Treasure of the Rudras. Because Square Enix is rapidly running out of Super Famicom RPGs that they've never released in the West. And those are the last two major ones that are available. I would put money that we're going to get a 2D HD remake of one of those two games, or if not a 2D HD remake, at the very least a remake of it. I would be very surprised if something like that is not announced at this Naughty 3.
It's a solid prediction.
Yeah, We'll see. I forgot. Oh, I never actually got to respond because you stole Avowed from the game you didn't want to see more of. Frig, let me think. I know what I want. I would like to see more of The Rise of the Golden Idol. It's the sequel to Case of the Golden Idol. Case of the Golden Idol, which is by far one of my favorite mystery adventure games of the last few years, and it's so ugly, and I love it. Okay, now let's move on to the last one. So this is pie in the sky, super long shot. This is if you could have anything out of this Naughty 3, something that's announced that you know isn't going to be announced, but you announced, what would that be?
I would love a Legend of Grimrock 3.
Wow, that is very specific.
Yeah, no, like first-person dungeon divers is a genre that had some resurgence, especially when the first Legend of Grimrock came out. And when I'm like, they can't do anything else with this, and then 2 came out, and I was like, this is a playground for puzzle solvers who love dark, dingy dungeons. And if they could do it again with a third game, I'd be floored.
For me, since you said it's super long shot, probably a new Nier game. It's been a while as well since the last Nier came out, so especially with all that teasing Yoko Taro and the entire Nier team have been doing lately, I just want whatever they're gonna make, and I just wish it'll come true soon, and I'm hoping it's not a mobile game. So
that's what I was about to say. That's the curse, is everything we say in this category is going to be released mobile only. For me, I'll do 2 of them. Both are, one is less of a long shot, but I want a new Ace Attorney game. I don't care if it follows the old continuity. I want a new Ace Attorney game. I don't think I'm going to get it. I think if they announce anything Ace Attorney, it is going to be a compilation of the 2 Ace Attorney investigation games. One was never released in the West, but I would be very surprised if they did not announce a compilation, because they've announced all of the rest of the compilations by this point. So they only have that left. They have that, and they have Professor Layton and Ace Attorney crossover game, which is awesome.
Oh, that's my favorite one, actually.
Oh, it's so good. It perfectly matches the spirit of both series. It's great.
I was doubtful because I'm like, this is a gimmick, but they nailed it.
Oh, it's great. So good. But the game that I'm really going to pick, the super long shot game, is that Bethesda will be announcing a new Fallout game for release next year. It will not happen. They wish that they could announce a new Fallout game at this point, because they missed a real good boat there. It was a cruise. missed a pleasure cruise with the announcement of and the reception of the Amazon TV show, and they had nothing to give gamers. I don't think Bethesda will have developed it by themselves. They're clearly, they're finishing up work on Starfield, and they're probably starting work on Elder Scrolls 6. But who knows? They may have farmed it out to another team. Obsidian. I'm not saying that Obsidian would do it. That would be awesome. But I think Obsidian's a little bit busy to do New Vegas 2. But maybe there's something. I don't know. We'll see. But I think that's my super long shot prediction. Regardless, I think it's going to be a pretty damn good Naughty 3. I'm pretty excited for it. And I really hope that we get some. We won't get all, but we get some of what we want.
Yeah, I'm really hoping to be surprised this time, given that the first half of this year is just too loaded already, and I even can't keep up with the games already. So, yeah, I'm hoping to hear some really good stuff coming.
Yeah.
The cool thing about this is it's never bad, right? It's only ever good news. It's just how good is the good news. So, I mean, I'm always excited for it. It's just like walking into a candy store. It's like, yeah, it all looks good.
Yep. It's like walking into a candy store and being like, all of these look really good, but I've got to add all of this candy to my candy backlog. I have a Snickers and an O. Henry that have been sitting there for like a couple of years now, and I need to get to them before I need to eat them before I get to the gum.
This got gross in a real hurry.
Yeah, I did get gross in a real hurry. That's how I feel about many things on my backlog. That's
I'm with you, man.
Yeah, that's. I don't want to say that Outer Wilds is like a moldy O. Henry at this point, but it's been sitting there long enough in my backlog, and I really need to play it.
You need to play that, though.
I know I need to play it. It's installed. I just haven't played it yet. Anyway, well, if you're looking for a way to support us here at RPG Fan and support our moldy candy habits, we've opened up a store, which you can find at www.rpgfan.com/shop. Lots of cool stuff in there. No moldy candy, but we do have t-shirts, and we have mugs, and we also have our collaboration with Hyperplay RPG, the RPG Fan Review Card Collection. And that is a showcase of nearly 300 of our review cards as seen on Instagram. Jer, you and I both have a number of review cards in there. It's a pretty cool book, and I really, really like it.
Merch.
Yeah, merch. It's merch. Buy the merch. You could also check out our past episodes of Random Encounter if you'd like to support us here on the show. Last week, I actually got a chance to interview two of the minds behind the indie adventure game Little Guardsmen. They are two very, very old friends of mine who I've known for over a decade, one case almost 20 years. I was super happy with the conversation. I had a really, really great time podcasting with both of them. So yeah, check that out. We also have Random Encounter, which is RPG Fans podcast focused on retro titles. And last week is the first part of a two-parter talking about the indie RPG Omari. We also have Rhythm Encounter, which is RPG Fans music podcast. And last week was focused on the music of Mario RPGs. So if you want to check those out, you can find them wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in contact with us here at Random Encounter, you can fire us off a message at podcast@rpgfan.com. Would absolutely love to hear from you. If you have any ideas for future episodes or discussion questions, anything you'd like to share, please fire it off to me. If you'd like to send me an email, you can do so at jlogan@rpgfan.com. You can also find me on Mastodon at johnologan@mastodon.social. I am not the only person on here with a social media presence. Jer, where can we find you online?
Bob@rpgfan.com.
That is very strange. Tin, where can we find you online?
As short as bobtin@rpgfan.com.
If you'd enjoyed this podcast, please share it with all of your friends to help us get the word out there. You can rate us on iTunes or other podcast players of choice. Bob, Tin, thank you so much for joining me today and talking about Hades 2. I know that you were both super, super pumped to this, that you were obviously big fans of the original, you're big fans of the early access. Talking to you about it has me super pumped about this game. I just cannot wait until version 1 is out and I can play it.
Neither can I.
We're excited for you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be so good. It sounds so good. And to everyone out there, I assume that you are also excited for Hades 2. But, there's a lot of games you can play in the meantime. So many games. So whatever you are playing, have fun.